At the other end of Pennsylvania now is joining us live from Capitol Hill is Congressman McCaul of Texas, who, of course, is the chair emeritus of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. It's good to have you, sir. I would love to begin with your assessment as to whether or not you believe that we need allied help in the Middle East with the Strait of Hormuz right now, as the president contends we don't need anyone's help. If that is the case, why is the strait not open for transit?
Well, we can't do it alone, Kaylee. I was in the White House yesterday, but I think the president's point is we're always there for NATO. We're always there for our European allies, and they should be there in our time of need. But if I could take that further with your business audience, you know, the United States is a net gain producer of energy. It's Europe that needs this probably more than we do. Certainly China needs it a lot. I mean, majority of their oil comes from Karg Island and from Iran. But the Hormuz Straits are being cleared currently by our military. The sea mines, the drones are really the biggest problem in the asymmetric warfare. But I think in terms of cost sharing, burden sharing in this conflict, it seems to me our friends and allies ought to be a part of this operation.
You know, it's interesting. Mr. Chairman, welcome back. It's good to see you. You've been walking through modeling and possible scenarios like this, I know, for a lot of years. And there are a lot of questions about what the president should be focused on. As he just said, we're resetting the meeting with China. The word he used was reset. Looks like it'll take place in about 5 weeks. Do you worry that whether it's South America, the Caribbean, Greenland, now Iran, that the president isn't focused on the biggest threat to the United States, which is China?
I think, and there's a valid point there when it comes to our military resources. We are moving, like, for instance, our THAAD defense system out of South Korea, moving that to the Middle East. So I do have some concerns along those lines. On the other hand, I think if you look at it from a geopolitical standpoint, the pressure that's being put on the countries that are so dependent on Iranian oil, like China, when they see a free Venezuela and American companies controlling that, when they see Cuba on the horizon, when they see their adversary alliances, you know, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, all in this together, that is now being impacted by energy. And so I think going into these talks, to answer your question, Joe, is that, you know, Condoleezza Rice once told me, you want everybody to like you. They're not always going to do that. You want them to respect you. And if they don't respect you, you want them to fear you. That is something that President Trump carries very greatly into these talks. There's no question that the dictators in the world today, whether it be Putin or Chairman Xi or the Ayatollah, the new one now, have great fear about President Trump, because he is unpredictable. He will negotiate, but if you don't negotiate in good faith, there will be consequences.
Well, let's talk about one of those dictators you just mentioned. For Vladimir Putin and for Russia, has President Trump actually handed you an incredible gift with the relief of sanctions and higher oil prices?
I disagree with that action. I personally, I have a sanctions bill ready to go with Lindsey Graham. Once we get the nod, you know, that it's time to do it. This is a setback for that legislation because we've lifted sanctions on Russia. Why am I against that? For this point, primarily, Putin and Russia are providing the Iranian regime with military intelligence to take out American targets and kill Americans. Why in the world would we be rewarding that kind of behavior by lifting sanctions for a temporary decrease in gas prices? We can do that by other means. I think we need to put more pressure on Russia, not less. And these Shahed drones, by the way, that Iran have been threatening our American troops with, were basically given to Russia, have been co-produced in Russia now with the Iranians, and now are being used to kill Americans. So it just, who's your friend and who's your enemy? Russia is not our friend. They are an adversary. They always have been. And I don't think we ought to be letting up pressure on them right now.
To that end, do you worry that the president might condition our support for Ukraine based on the way NATO behaves with Iran?
To some extent, and let's not forget, Ukraine volunteered its expertise to deal with this asymmetric warfare with the drones. They have the best capability, in some respects better than we do. Think about this. We pay millions of dollars for an interceptor to take out a $2,000 drone. Ukraine, for 4 years now, have developed very innovative technology to counter these Shahed drones in a very effective but also very cost-effective way. I applaud Ukraine for helping the United States out, and I think the United States should reward that behavior, not punish that behavior.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you've seen the news today that Joe Kent has resigned as the head of counterterrorism at the DNI under Tulsi Gabbard. And in his resignation, he in part suggested that there was no imminent threat posed to the United States by Iran. I wonder if the briefings that you have received would dispute that, and what you make specifically of him pointing the finger at Israel, suggesting it was Israel that made President Trump take this action.
Well, I think this was a bad appointment, the National Counterterrorism Center. I mean, if anyone should understand the threat level, the fact that they've tried to assassinate the president, Mike Pompeo's under indictment. I'm under indictment in Iran because of Soleimani. There are sleeper cells here. I think he was part of this wing in my party that's isolationist, that's becoming increasingly sort of anti-Israel, if you will. And I disagree with it. And I'm frankly, it's time for a new leader at NCTC, and I look forward to that. So, I disagree with his assertions. I think the threat level, given the conflict in Iran right now, is on high alert, as you've seen demonstrated with the last 4 attacks, one in my hometown of Austin, one with a Boston bombing type style attempt in New York, Virginia, in a classroom, and then in a synagogue. And I think you're going to see more of these. So for the guy who's supposed to be connecting all the dots to say that there was no imminent threat, I would respond to him, there's been an imminent threat since 1979, when the Ayatollah took over Iran, and in a dark veil of terror descended on the Middle East, spreading terror through its proxies for almost 50 years. I think it's high time that I applaud the president for this very difficult decision, because no other president's done it since President Trump.
Chair McCaul, we've got to ask you about Cuba while we have you. And our remaining question, there's a nationwide blackout, and it looks like a regime that's about to fall. The president says, "I do believe I will be having the honor of taking Cuba." That's a direct quote. "I think I can do anything I want with it." As remarkable as that rhetoric is, what should he do with it?
Well, the president always speaks in very bold, terms, but I think what he's saying is there are winds of change in the air. There are winds of freedom. After Venezuela fell, the people in Iran rose up to the Ayatollah, and the people in Cuba have attacked the Communist Party's headquarters in Cuba. We have another opportunity, I think, with Cuba for freedom, and democracy that we haven't seen in a long time. John Kennedy had the Bay of Pigs operation that failed miserably. I don't see a military-style invasion, but rather, as we talked about, the global markets of energy. Cuba now has been cut off of their energy supply from Venezuela and Mexico, and now, importantly, Iran. So their economy now, I believe, is going to be decimated, and will provide the ingredients that are going to be ripe for a revolution and an overthrow of that communist dictatorship. That could be another yet hugely profound and historic geopolitical moment.
Wow. Really important conversation with Michael McCaul, Congressman, of course, Republican from Texas, but also Chair Emeritus of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Chair, thank you so much. Really interesting, Kayleigh, what we learned there. We want to play this to the